just introduce yourself for the camera?
I'm Julian Huppert, I'm the Member of Parliament for Cambridge.
Is it okay to call you by Julian?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, do you feel that youth homelessness is a major concern to the government at the moment?
Yes, I think it is. I mean, I think homelessness in general is an increasing concern, and quite rightly. The numbers are actually down on what they peaked at a few years ago under the Labour government, but the risk is that it goes back up again, and that would really be something representing youth homelessness as well as general homelessness.
Yeah, sure. What is the impact of youth homelessness in Cambridge?
I mean, we certainly have some. And the YMCA does a fantastic job in sort of looking after a number of people. I've been there to have a look around and talk to some of the people there. But it is a factor. I mean, partly, I mean, in a number of ways, but it's partly about sort of the social groups and dynamics where people get sort of trapped up in it. And that route is a very depressing route, is a little harsh, but trying to help people to recover from some of the things, often that have caused the homelessness, is definitely a huge problem. And there is a lot that tries to happen in Cambridge, both to catch people if they become homeless, but also to try to help and support people through, hopefully out.
Okay. Do you believe that young people allow themselves to become homeless?
No, I mean, I've heard people say that it's sort of young people's fault in some way for being homeless. I think that's not really the case. The majority of people I've spoken to who found themselves homeless in one way or another, there have been other factors which have led to it. Disappointing number where it's been some sort of people have been in care, abused as children, family breakdowns of various more traumatic kinds. There are generally a range of incidents like that. Drug use in some cases, but again, not all. I know that's very much a stereotype. But it tends to be external effects, which have. It's not that anybody who is in care will end up homeless. It's certainly not the case, but it makes it more likely. So I don't think young people bring it on themselves in a sense. I think it tends to be people where what has happened to lead up to it has made it far more likely. Now, I mean, from a policy perspective, that means what we need to do is to fix the problems. So we need to make sure that care isn't an environment that leads to problems. We need to make sure that children aren't abused in any way at all. Yeah. And we need to provide more support to make it less likely that it will happen. So no, I mean, the idea of blaming victims is definitely not what I'd subscribe to.
Some people do think.
No, I know. I've had arguments with people about that.
It is pretty scary, isn't it? That sometimes people do think that, if they're homeless, this must be their fault. I mean, considering that it is not their fault, I mean, do you feel that we should do something about it?
Well, definitely. I mean, we need to provide support for people to try to avoid homelessness. I mean, one of the key things to say about homelessness is it's not just not having a house. It's not. And there's also often a misconception that you fix homelessness by saying, here are the keys to a flat. That's not the same thing. There are people who are sort of functionally homeless who do actually have somewhere. There are other problems relating to that. It's not just I don't have somewhere to sleep at the moment. So yes, we definitely have to do a lot. I mean, a lot of it starts really early. It starts well before the age of 5. Mm-hmm. Now, this is one of the sad things, is that you can statistically predict who will become homeless by what happens to them by the age of 5. It's not always right. Things change. Mm-hmm. But there are very early factors that have a very, very large effect. I can't now remember the figures for homelessness, but certainly for prison, which I know is not the same thing, a quarter of people in prison were in care. That's a huge proportion. That says to me that we need to be fixing our care system so that it's better. I provide much more support for individuals, intervening earlier to support people when they need to. And there is a thread of government policy about providing free nursery care for people from the age of 2, particularly from more disadvantaged backgrounds, so that you don't wait until things go wrong. Mm-hmm. Now, not everybody who ends up being homeless had issues when they were young. Not everybody has a really troubled childhood ends up homeless, but let's fix it as much as we can throughout.
I say preventive measures. So.
Absolutely. I mean, the same applies whether we're talking, again, disproportionately people who end up homeless have mental health problems. We don't do enough to support people with mental health problems. We don't do enough to intervene early on to help support people. Let's try and fix these things as early as possible.
And as you understand, sir, I mean, there are probably a lot of people who say that why can't they just get on with it themselves? I mean, what would happen if we do take this opinion and let's say for them hypothetically that yes, I think we should just let them get on with it.
What
will happen?
I think it's just unrealistic. I think what you need to do is to provide support. I am very involved with an organisation called FLAC, Cambridge,
Yes.
you presumably know, which is a fantastic way, I think, of helping homeless and ex-homeless people achieve, develop, show that they can actually do things. Because one of the consequences of and again, this isn't everybody, but people who are homeless, is they often feel unsuccessful, that they can't achieve things, they can't do things. There's that real sense of inability and failure. And actually, I think people can do a lot of things, but we need to make it easier. I mean, if we were just to take the sort of extreme position that you're suggesting and saying, well, just get on with it, sort yourself out, it'd be disastrous. It doesn't work. But what I would like to do is to put things in place so that people who are homeless can sort themselves out, but it requires a lot of help. I don't think the state should sort people out. It should help them to sort themselves out, but you do that by providing support and providing infrastructure, not by saying just go away and do it.
Absolutely, yes. It's very good that it's very good to hear that the government is actually looking to do something. In terms of actual actions, I mean, what is the current policy and actions that government is taking to enable these homeless young people to bring their life to the track, so to speak?
Well, I mean, there's a whole range of different interventions, and as I say, some of them start off really, really early. So some of them won't affect current young homeless people because they're about changing lifestyles at the age of 2, 3, 4, 5. I still think it's important to do because I don't want to have similar issues in the future. I mean, there are a range of things about providing better mental health care, better support at school. Again, disproportionately, people who become homeless had issues when they were at school, particularly secondary school. Now, again, it's not always the case, but there are lots of things there. So trying to provide more support, things like there's a scheme called the Pupil Premium, which gives schools more money for people from poor backgrounds, and part of that is to give the school flexibility to do things for those individuals. And again, not everyone from those backgrounds has problems, not everybody who has problems goes on to become homeless, but for example, one school in Cambridge found that people coming to secondary school, and there were always a few every year who couldn't read. And the life chances of somebody who gets to secondary school unable to read are pretty poor because they won't get very much out of secondary school. They are likely to become more troublesome at school for obvious reasons, and that leads down a fairly negative route. So that school is using some of the pupil premium money to hire a reading teacher to help those people specifically. So the whole range of things there, because it's not just about building houses. There is more affordable housing being built in Cambridge. There's a lot more housing coming up. That will help. But fundamentally, homelessness isn't about just not having a house. It's not about just not having a flat. It's about far, far more. It's about skills training, so promoting apprenticeships, finding ways for people to get into employment and getting it, not just for the money, though that's important as well, but also for the sense of pride and achievement and success.
Absolutely, and that's how Teamv works as well. We work with under-25s to actually make them understand that they can change society, and of course getting people like Emily's involved to actually make them feel that we can actually do something.
Absolutely.
At the moment, I mean, with the government's numerous commitment, and especially with the budget constraint and so on, we have heard a lot about actions being taken by the government. One of them, very interestingly, is about social housing, as you said before, social housing as affordable housing quotas. Now, as we all know, that for any real estate project to take place, the current legal requirement is that one must have a certain number of housing being built as affordable housing. there has been proposals that this is to be scrapped. What's your view on that? I mean, how would that impact Cambridge?
You're absolutely right that it's one of the things that's being looked at. It alarms me a huge amount. As I understand it, it wouldn't affect Cambridge because councils would still have the ability to insist on affordable housing. And in Cambridge, we have been very, very robust on the need to have affordable housing. And affordable doesn't mean £300,000. It means that people who actually need it can actually afford to be in it. And we've fought court cases against some of the developers a few years ago in order to maintain that on some of the building estates because it's absolutely essential. Cambridge has about 7,000 people on the housing waiting list. That's people who either don't have accommodation or don't have accommodation that's large enough. So there'll be a couple who were in a perfectly sized thing and now they have 2 children. So 7,000 people who need to slide up. We need to build houses for them, or flats, or whatever it may be, and we need to make sure that they are at a price which people can afford to get into.
Absolutely.
So the council is doing things. The council in Cambridge is building more council housing for the first time for decades, and that's really good because that's run by the council. But some of the housing associations are also doing a good job. So CHS, used to be Chester Housing Society, they're really impressive in their commitment to making sure that there is really, truly affordable housing. And they're funding it by building some expensive things to sell, with the purpose being to build things that they actually want to build.
Absolutely.
Which is a very different way round of saying to a developer, you must do the following.
Absolutely.
CHS are doing it in order to provide housing that people can afford.
It's very reassuring to hear that it will have no impact on Cambridge because the
Well, I hope it won't. The council has been really robust on this. It's absolutely essential that we have.
But just that if that's the case, surely if the council can propose or insist even to estate developers that they must build a certain amount of social housing, then surely there is no need for such a proposal in the Parliament to actually reduce or remove rather this quota.
I mean, I'm not a fan of the proposals. What I don't know is what the position is like in the rest of the country. I'm just not as expert in the rest of the country. In Cornwall things are very, very different because what you have there is lots of second home ownership. In areas of the northwest you'll have a different feel. And that's why what's right for Cambridge, and it's definitely right for Cambridge to have a very large proportion of affordable housing. I suspect it's right everywhere else, but I don't know.
We don't know.
I think there are other things that one could do. In Cornwall, they're now increasing the amount of council tax you have to pay on a second home, a third home, and a fourth home, because actually most people don't need to have several homes. So that strikes me as a good place to tax, and we're going to do some of that in Cambridge as well, I think.
I see.
Because you have to get money from somewhere, and frankly, I'd rather take money from people who can afford their second, their third, their fourth home. I'm delighted that they can afford. That's great for them, but they clearly can afford to help other people more.
Excellent. And finally, just a couple of questions from YMCA residents that Emily has kindly collected for us. Actually, yesterday night, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So if you couldn't mind to just share the questions and see what Julian would think of that.
How is the coalition policy of removing housing benefit for under 25-year-olds likely to affect people living in unsuitable housing?
Well, firstly, it's not a coalition policy, and that's really important. It's something that David Cameron has said that the Tories would do if they won, and that they would like to do. And it's something that we have said no. I hope we'll continue saying no and just not let them have it, because I think it's a ridiculous idea. People who are under 25 sometimes need housing. I think David Cameron is thinking of a world where everybody has a stable, loving family who they can live with. There have never been any problems, and I'd love that to be the world. But I don't, But it comes back to this idea we were talking about earlier, whether people who are under 25 who don't live with their family do it because they really want to, or because of what's happened. And I think the idea of taking it away from under 25-year-olds is just fundamentally missing the point of what has led people under 25 to being like this. Huge portion of under 25s who do get housing benefits at the moment have children, disproportionately for obvious reasons. Lot of drug-related issues, mental health issues, family issues, abuse issues, care issues. it's just wrong. So I will certainly be fighting it as hard as I can. I've said that publicly many times.
Yeah.
I think I think it's why we need to avoid having a majority Conservative government, and why actually having some Lib Dems in government means we say to them, no, you can't do that. So.
Okay, just one more question. How will your party ensure that there will be, or is how will your party ensure there will be, or is sufficient affordable accommodation for young people and families to move into?
Well, I mean, I think that part is really about trying to make sure that more is built. So I was talking earlier in Cambridge, there's a huge waiting list, 7,000 people who want more. So we are building new council houses.
Yeah.
We are working with housing associations to build more affordable housing. And many of them are doing a really, really good job. There's a big delay, so in this area there's a lot of planning permission where houses can be built and the developers don't get on and do it. So the government said that it was going to do a bit to try to help make sure that actually just gets going. Once you've got the stage of designing the thing, just build the houses. But also about building housing, one of the issues is that the last government, there was less social housing at the end than there was at the beginning. And actually we saw a lot less of it because a lot of it was sold off. So you had the right to buy council houses and things like that. So you ended up with less social housing than you started with. We're now trying to build more of it back up again. But unfortunately it takes time. But we absolutely have to make sure there's more housing. Also, so I'm quite keen on is bringing empty homes back. If you look around Cambridge, there are large numbers of empty homes. And I don't mean places that are, it's a couple of months, but places which have been empty for a long time. And I would like to see those used. Because it just feels, when you've got people who don't have somewhere to live and you've got empty places, it feels obvious. So I think there is a lot we can do on that. There is action nationally to try to do that. I think some of the council tax changes will mean that people who are sitting on empty homes just have to pay more. And they might think, actually, how about I sell this to somebody who can use it, or rent it out, or do something with it. And I think that will help, because you're absolutely right. We have to make sure there is accommodation for everybody. Nick Clegg was talking a week ago or so, put a couple of £100 million towards the idea of building more garden cities, garden towns, to try to really drive new settlements, and saying that we can't just fit in another house here and another house there. Let's build a new town. In the way that happened in so many places in the past. So I think we have to make sure there is the housing available. But it is also, homelessness is not the same thing as just not having a place to live. So we also have to provide all the rest of the support for people. So
absolutely. And I think that will be almost the end. It's just one final thing. I mean, there are some of the viewers who know that are currently either residents at the YMCA or with like Jimmy's Night Shelter, who are currently homeless. I mean, have you got anything to say to them?
Well, I mean, I've met some of you, and I hope that we can find ways to help, to find accommodation, support, training, a warm environment. And I know the YMCA and Jimmy's do their best to do that. There's far more that we need to do. I hope that as a city, as a country, we will do more. And I hope you have a very good Christmas. And I hope that you do, spend it with friends.
Yes.